Good morning, everyone. I'm going to chair today as the president is going to be a little late arriving. As the vice president, I'll chair the meeting until John Mitchell arrives. So we're calling the meeting to order. Any changes to the agenda, or does someone want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Kohler will make a motion to approve.
So we got Kohler, seconded by Bob, it looks like. Any changes? Any? All right, all in favor of the approving the agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstention? Okay, the agenda is approved. So we move into member comments. Graham, do you want to give the little preamble?
Yes, thanks, Tim. So the board encourages comments about the cooperative from its members. The board asks that each participant's comment pertain to cooperative business. Those wanting to address the board during the public comment period are granted 5 minutes to address their topics. Lengthy comments to the board should be submitted in writing. Formal complaints must be filed in writing and submitted in compliance with the applicable board policy. Comments from the public will be directed to the entire board, not to any individual. The board does not respond directly to comments or questions at this meeting, but will take comments and questions under advisement for analysis by staff. No personal attacks shall be allowed. Failure to follow these requirements may cause the public comment period to be terminated. Copies of our cooperative policies and procedures on public comment and filing complaints are available on the cooperative website.
So do we have, looks like we have one attendee that wants to make a comment. Their hands up. Emily. So.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Emily Frogen. I am a member in town, and I just have some questions and I'm curious for an update on the partial buyout process. So specifically, I heard that after waiting for several months, FERC, they sent the partial buyout settlement back to an ALJ for more hearings. And I'd like to see an update on this and what the timeline is for these hearings and approval on the settlement. I've also heard that this kind of process of FERC can take 2 years to happen. And if that's the case, I'd like to see kind of an update on LPEA's strategy regarding the 3 prongs of Tri-State's exit. A full exit, I know at Tri-State takes 2 years notice for the Tri-State board approval. And so I'd encourage LPEA to start considering a full exit now if we're stuck at FERC with the partial buyout. Lastly, I'd like to see some info on whether LPEA expects the same hiccups with the full exit at FERC as they encountered with the partial buyout and United's objection to the settlement. So to summarize, I'd just like to see more info and clarity on LPEA's strategy regarding the partial buyout, the full exit, and FERC and Tri-State's timeline. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Anyone else with a hand up? Doesn't look like it. All right, let's move on to consent board items if possible. Anyone want to remove anything from the consent board items? Would someone care to make a motion to approve them?
I'll move.
Kohler will
Tim,
make the motion.
I'll second Kohler's motion.
Okay, we got a motion from Kohler and one from Ted. Joe, do you have a question?
Yeah, and I apologize for this. I'd like to go to that, the CREA meeting in February in Denver, and I did not submit anything formal. Can I still do that?
Why don't we take director travel and training requests out of the consent agenda and we'll come back to talk about that. How's that?
Okay.
So if okay with everyone, we'll remove Director Travel. I guess we don't need to actually have your approval, but we'll remove Director Travel and training requests. So the motion is to approve all the others except item E. So all in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
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 Any,
Aye.
thank you. Any opposed or abstain? All right, so consent items approved. So let's take Director Travel and training requests. I also did not put anything in there, was not sure how we were going to choose delegates. When I look through the travel and training requests for the board packet, there were none in there. Yet there is a request to identify delegates that would go to the CREA annual meeting, as well as the Western United annual meeting in February. So I'm thinking perhaps we have that discussion. We decide who those delegates are. That's later in the agenda. And then whoever those are would be put forth as travel training requests accordingly. Sue, you have a hand up?
Just a comment in that we will have our February meeting before that CREA meeting. So, you know, any director who wants to can also put it in for that next month.
Yeah, that's probably a good point, Sue. You know, the reason we want our delegates in place now is that we'll have some paperwork to file on behalf of CREA and Western United to sort of identify who the voting people are, but non-voting directors who want to attend, we don't have the same deadline pressures.
Okay, so maybe there's two questions here. One is the delegate selection, which should occur now, and obviously that includes a travel request. But there may be other directors that want to attend who are not delegates. And at the moment, there's no request for that in this board meeting agenda. So I guess we'll take Sue's suggestion and come to those approvals in February. Is that the will of the board here?
And I think that seems reasonably in line with policy 109 of trying to submit requests in advance so that the board has time to vote on it. So I guess we can use this as an announcement that if you would like to attend one of these meetings in February, please reach out to staff to make sure we get that all those put in next month's director travel and training request line items.
Okay. Kohler, you have a hand up?
Yeah, just one comment, and that is that if you register early, mostly for the lodging, sometimes you'll get into the block that they save, and if you wait too long, that block is filled up and it will cost you more. So if you want to go and we approve it now, I think that gives you a head start and maybe get a better price on it. Just a thought.
Okay. So should we try to approve those? Any requests here today, now, for those who know them? I mean, that's how we used to do it. We used to do it in person. You know, people would raise their hand. It wasn't ahead of time. It's not completely out of the norm. Again, I'm just trying to facilitate here.
I mean, it doesn't seem to matter when we do that, as long as we do it before the meeting. But yes, Kohler's comment about getting in early, I might be too late already, but.
Holly, you have your hand up?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'll go and I'll look for that date for the hotel block. And also I am planning on being up there. So I guess this is my submission for a request, sir.
Sue?
You know, Kohler's point is well taken. So I guess those who want to attend could just raise our hand now and go ahead and have that approved at this meeting, if that works for everybody.
Fine with me. So Those who plan to attend or want the approval to attend, let's raise your hand. So we've got Sue McWilliams, Joe Lewandowski, Holly Metzler, Kirsten Skehan. Anyone else? All right, so somebody make a motion to approve those 4 requests. And
So moved, Kirsten.
Kirsten moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Dan Huntington made a second, it looks like. So all in, I guess the only question would be, do you have sufficient room in your budget? I guess it's a new year, so we all have sufficient room, no? Okay, all right, that question's answered. So Holly, you have a question?
No, it was more just an observation, just so the board has an idea. I was excited to see that the regional NRECA summer director school is going to be in Santa Fe this year. So it's significantly closer. So just so you have more than less information in your pocket.
Thank you, Holly. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve those 4 travel requests. Any other comment? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand and say hi. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed or abstain? Okay, so that motion passed. So have fun in Denver. CEO and staff reports. Take it away, Jessica, please.
Okay, and just so that folks know, John Lee has joined. So
Oh, okay, excellent.
at the bottom.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. See if this works. Okay. How does that look to everybody? Good?
Ugly.
Ugly, I know, right? Yes, we have a lot of people that are into the holiday spirit, so that's always fun.
Just the sweater that's ugly.
Yeah. Be careful. All right. Okay, here is our key performance indicators. So we're all green checks. We do have, except for the monitoring performance for the 3 reliability items. And as we mentioned before, those are really due to the storms that we had this summer with the lightning that really brought the averages up over those numbers. And we thought that we could bring those down, but of course these storms in December impacts the averages. So what we look at, and Dan and I had a great conversation, I'm going to squeeze through over to here. So what we look at in these is, as you can see, the blue line is the rolling average. And what we want to make sure is that it's going down, right? And so we see in March, April, May, June, July, they're high. So that impacted the average, bringing those above our monthly goal. But in August, September, October, November, squeezing by in December a little bit, does go a little bit over the goal. Unfortunately, that December one did kind of keep it up. We thought we could go below the goal, but because those were a little bit higher, that is the problem. So that is, if they weren't, like I mentioned, if that wasn't, the trending line wasn't going down, we'd be a little concerned about why this is above the line and go back and look to see if there was a problem. Joe, did you have a question? Oh, you're on mute.
Yep. Yeah, just further down the beneficial electrification. I'm just curious, so we can measure that specifically, and what does that include then?
Yeah, so that's been this graph right here for quite some time. So Dan, do you want to explain what you're measuring?
Yeah, and so Joe, you can see the 4 elements that we're including in there. It's EVs, ETS heaters, heat pumps, and heat pump water heaters. Those are the 4 that are in that. And colored by chart, the heat pumps have been the winner of the year by far. Those have really been cranking it out. And we do not meter those separately. What we do is an approximation on those. We do have electric vehicle data. We specifically know how much EVs are using, but we can't tabulate that each month very easily. So we look at an average usage for an EV, and then we do get monthly numbers on from the Department of Motor Vehicles on how many EVs are in the counties. And so we multiply that by the average usage that we're actually seeing from the EVs we're metering and extrapolate that out to the total EVs in the area. And then the heat pumps are based on the tonnage that are installed from the rebates. And we know on average per ton how much that uses in energy.
Great, thanks.
Don't want to get people sick, but I'm going fast. Okay. Okay, any other questions on this page before I go to the next one? Okay. So take a look at this picture because I'll talk about it. This was one of the bullet points later down, but I went to Washington, D.C., as I mentioned in the dashboard. And I went into Hickenlooper's office and there was a CEO from CORE there. And he said, "Oh my gosh, you're famous. You guys are on his wall." And so I got to take a picture. This is in the entry wall of Hickenlooper's office where he's putting all these cool pictures. So our school bus is prominently there. So pretty proud of that. Okay, so, you know, we never like to see accidents, but I'm glad it was only one during the storms. As you guys saw, we had some pretty crazy storms again. Just want to say the crews and the MSRs did an unbelievable job of getting everybody in power before the night, right? So I can't remember, Jerry, we're going to look at the statistics, but what was the, how many people were out and then we got them back in power in how many hours?
So we've had through the kind of the three major storms that we've had, we've got up to at one point over 6,000 each time members out, and nobody was out for more than 12 hours, which is unbelievable. The guys, we've changed a bunch of our processes and procedures and how we operate during major storms, and it's really paying off and also keeping them safer.
Thanks. And actually, yeah, that's the bullet point. They restored more than 4,000 members within 14 hours. And Hillary's team, as we've mentioned in the past dashboards, we put some bullet points in there saying that we're also redoing how we take calls. So we've really reduced the call volume coming into LPEA, which is a good sign because we're putting upfront messaging on these, and Hillary and her team are just doing a ton of texting and Facebook and social media to let people know what's going on. This one accident was a lineman using a hot stick and the fuse fell, and this is during just one of those terrible storms, hit his shoulder and head. Fortunately, he was wearing a hard hat and that really saved him. And so he was out for a little bit, but our corrective actions are definitely, we always take these bad situations and create an opportunity. And so we develop safety memos, we look at root cause analysis, and then we go back and discuss with the crews what went wrong. I'm sure most of you have seen there was a fatality the day before Christmas Eve in Ohio. It was a apprentice lineman, 22 years old. I don't have a lot of the details, but there was contact and he died. And so it just reminds all of us that this is really dangerous work and we take it serious. Every accident that happens, we take a pause, learn from it, see how we can improve and keep everybody safe. So these last storms, again, we haven't seen any major accidents. Well, any accidents of our crews. We had one bumper that you'll see next month get smashed by a snowplow, but nobody hurt. So that's good news. Bob, did you have a question?
Yeah, back to Jerry. I was just curious what the maybe he could just highlight the changes to process or procedure that helped get people back in power quicker. I was curious about that.
One of them is just our dispatch and the way that they manage the crews when they're all out. It is just crazy in the dispatch office during these times. Hillary's group and the way that calls have been routed has really freed up the dispatchers to really focus on where to send the crews next. that has cut down on response times immensely. So thanks to her group. And then one thing that we've done in the field is we are, whenever possible, sending 2 guys together. And not only is this allows for 2 drivers after you've been working, you know, long hours and you start getting tired of tromping around in the snow. 2 drivers, and then also just cutting down on times as small as refusing a fuse barrel. You know, 2 people can cut that time in half, and then all the way up to putting lines back up. And it's just really, you don't have to wait around for somebody to show up to give you a hand. And it's really, really improved our times.
Well, you guys did amazing. So thank you, Jerry, and thank all the
you.
guys and
Appreciate
women that are in the inside and outside making that work. Great work.
Okay, Kirsten.
Yeah, Jessica, thanks for bringing up that apprentice lineman. His name was Blake Rogers, and I wanted to mention his name because he was a person, and he had a family just like all our line workers have. And it, you know, when I saw that come up in the co-op feed, I was like, oh my God, that's those kinds of things can happen to us no matter how safe we are. Every once in a while, something might sneak through. So I really wanted to just take an extra second to acknowledge that, you know, our folks out there put their life on the line for us, and I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Kirsten. All right, Ted.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. I wanted to point out, I guess, check mark 2 on the screen now, LPEA as a national leader. And, you know, I really appreciate the, you know, what staff and, you know, has done to accomplish that, what our organization has done to accomplish that. I think it's a sort of a metric that doesn't really get recorded, but it's super important. And it's also, it's a springboard. I mean, I think you even mentioned in that paragraph, you know, how LPEA gets invited to participate in a lot of things that that a lot of other co-ops do not. And so there's a lot of great opportunity there, but all that opportunity is created by the, you know, the effort and the progress that LPEA has made to get to this position. So kudos, and, you know, I look forward to capitalizing on a lot of that.
Thank you, Ted. Yeah, we do as well. So, cross our fingers that we get those grants awarded. Okay, I will move on. Let's see. So again, what we talked about, the new outage comms protocols, to Bob's point, this has really helped. Well, and to Jerry's point, this has really helped us have more focus on getting out there and actually getting folks back online, but getting more communications out. So again, I agree. Kudos to Hillary and her team for helping do this. Again, we continue to try to do safety demonstrations. Women in leadership work is still moving forward. I'm going to be working with Elizabeth and some of Hillary's team. There's been an interest in having us really lead the way on having other women in the community come together, and then we create mentors. So we're really trying to promote even women getting into the electric industry. And so that's part of it as well. Also NRECA, I was just at the CEO conference last month, and I'll bring this in the dashboard next time, but they're asking me to chair the NRECA's National Women in Power Group. So that was, it's pretty awesome. So more to come on that. Kohler, did you have a question?
And maybe you'll get to it, but you in the electric safety demonstration, that Silver Spruce Academy, where is that and what age group is that?
Hillary, Hillary's team manages this. I'll let her answer.
Yeah, so Carrie Hughes is our staff member that runs that. I believe they're middle schoolers. And I do not know where, but I can check and get back to you. Oh, there. Oh, sorry. Carrie's listening right now and she's teamsing me. So they are actually a homeschool group in Durango. And what ages are they, Carrie? She's teamsing me right now. Ages elementary to high school. So it's a full range of ages, and they're all homeschooled.
Thank you.
Great. And then we will definitely dive into the power supply update during that agenda item and go into executive session to talk in much more detail on that item. Okay, Tim?
Yeah, I was just curious about the new outage communications protocols. It mentions a new communications plan. I'm just curious how that, briefly how the plan works. What's the difference?
Yeah, so Tim, the outages that were around last Christmas and Thanksgiving, those holiday outages, that was the most outages that we had seen in a decade, according to Jerry and his team. So we really took that opportunity to solicit comments and feedback from our members who had been impacted. And we got some great feedback. And then also we have some new technology that is available thanks to our phone system upgrade. And so the gist of what we did, I think probably one of the most impactful things is we changed our phone protocols, our upfront phone protocol. So what happens is we have a standard upfront phone message for in hours and then a separate one for out of hours. We swap that when there are outages, so that right up front when you call us, you don't have to listen to the standard phone message. You hear a special, we are experiencing outages in our district. Press 5 to hear updates and to report your outage to our automated system. Because what we heard is that many people were just calling to make sure that we knew. And if they couldn't actually get a hold of someone, which is hard during after hours, then they just kept calling and calling and calling. And so by changing that upfront phone protocol, we get a lot of drop calls immediately after people hear that message. If folks want to know more, we now have after they press 5, we now can leave a voice recording updating the situation. And our new protocol is every 2 hours, we update that message. And after that, a ton of phone calls drop off. And then if folks want to stay on and still report their outage, they can through the automated phone system. The other thing that we started doing is we have had the automated texting service for a long time, but usually people would just get, you're out of power, you're back in power, and that's it. So we started a new protocol, again, every 2 hours or so, when situations warrant, we'll send manual text messages letting people know what's happening with those kind of longer outages. And of course, this isn't everybody. Like if you're impacted by a 12-person outage, you likely won't get those. But if you're impacted by, like, for example, the Purgatory substation outage that we had, then you'll get updates every 2 to 3 hours as crews continue to work. And then beyond that, it's just speaking to the media. It's regular posting on social media. It's a huge red banner across our website with a link to an article with tons of updates. And those things we've been doing for a while. But I think the biggest changes for these recent storms was the phone protocols and the texting protocols.
Perfect. Hey, thanks. It sounds like learning as we go is improving things, and I sure appreciate it. So thanks very much. Less calls from my neighbors.
Yes, and Tim, that's a good question. That reminded me that Joe actually texted me yesterday about a danger tree that he saw driving. And I think, Tim, you've also called in some of those. John Lee definitely on his calls. So I wanted to say thank you. That's very helpful. So I just want to make that an open invitation that if any of you see anything, please text me at any time or day, because then I send that information to Jerry and then he has a crews go out and look. And like this one tree that was hanging over one of our lines, sure enough, the crews are going to go out and remove it. But that's preventative and it's very helpful. So I wanted to thank you for doing that. Okay. All right. Again, I already mentioned the Hickenlooper meetings. That was a fun fact. The Giving Tree support was a great success again. So thank you for those of you who participated in that. That was very helpful. There's more information on that link that Hillary added. And then as we usually do, we try to dribble out CREA information every dashboard. So that one is about our long-term debt per member. And then again, record rebates in 2022. And I'm sure 2023 is going to be even higher because of the federal rebates going way up. So we're excited to see that, especially the heat pumps and EV chargers, those will be very interesting to see. Okay, Joe.
So we'll administer rebates from the federal government and tri-state too, is that?
Hillary, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so no, we will only be administering the rebates through tri-state and through ours. However, we do have a large campaign planned this year to leverage all of the additional incentives that are available federally to get people to move faster, hopefully.
No, great.
Yeah, and I will say that we will have to have some patience on this because Hillary only has a team of 3 people and actually really 1 working on the rebates. Drew's team is trying to automate more of this work, so it's not paper, but when Hillary and I took this over, 3.5 years ago, it was all paper. And so we've tried to change it all over to electronic to be faster, easier, but it is still kind of a slog getting through this. So there will be, some delays depending on the interest and how much work, but we are, like I said, Drew's team is trying to automate all that work. Tim, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. So the federal rebates, which are a tax credit, right? The ones that we provide generally come from tri-state, and I'm just curious: is there anything that these are additive? They're not like one or the other, right? So someone who wants to put in a heat pump this year could take advantage of a federal tax credit as well as get a rebate from tri-state. Is that correct? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Just to make sure people understand, these are not, one doesn't cancel the other. You can get some pretty significant subsidy for 2023, which I should have waited, I guess. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Holly.
Great, thank you. I don't know if this is too related, and I was going to wait till the tri-state report, but there is a USDA Inflation Reduction Act REA discussion going on January 26th. And I honestly think it would behoove us to have some folks sit in on that. I did register, but unfortunately I do have a CREA meeting at that exact same time. It's the 26th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard. So the link to sign up for it is in the tri-state board packet on page 82, or on page 82 of this board packet, I'm sorry.
Great, thank you, Holly. Okay. And that is the end. So are there any other questions? Kirsten?
Yeah, is this where we ask questions from the appendix?
Yes.
And actually, and there's 2 sets of appendix. There's the appendix that we see right here on your screen in those slides. And then at the end of the very last few pages of the report, there's an appendix. Which appendix are we taking questions on now?
Anything, Kirsten, any.
Okay, cool. So my first question is going to be on this first initial part of the report. In the appendix, we have trend lines or of SAIDI, SAFE, and I don't know if we have a SI. When we look at our key performance indicators, which we're on 21, and they have those. So we're done for the year on that, and we're going to start at 0 or start at 100% this next month. Is that correct?
Explain that.
Yes, Kirsten. Now this chart on this appendix is always going to show a rolling average of the 24 months, with the blue line representing that 12-month rolling average. The one on the front is year to date, starts at 0 and accumulates.
Okay, super. So that is helpful. This chart that you happen to have up right now, the red line is the goal. Do you have a moving average on this? I don't.
The blue line is the moving average.
The blue line is a moving average, and how many months is that moving?
12 months.
Is that a 12-month? Okay, super. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
That was it for my questions up top in the appendix. I do have some questions for down below when we get there. So I'll wait.
Okay, Holly?
All I wanted to say is I really enjoy reading the dashboard. It's been streamlined so beautifully. I get so much information out of it. And it's just an awesome testament to the work of every department of LPEA. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Holly. It's a lot of work has gone into this, so we appreciate that. Okay. Kirsten, so are you asking questions about the dashboard and the appendix associated with the dashboard? I'm sorry. You're on mute.
I'm wondering about the appendix down at the end. There's 4 or 5 pages. It's got the capital items budget. It's got the training. It's got your thing. And I don't know when we ask questions on that.
John looks like he has arrived, so it's, I think, what he prefers.
Sorry, repeat the question.
Oh, Kirsten, why don't you just ask the question? I think maybe now's the time. 'Cause I don't,
Okay, super. Yeah. We can't catch him right as he comes in and expect him to be able to have an answer. Okay, so my first one is on capital items, 107, page 107 of 107. So it looks like we didn't get the Ford F-150 Lightnings, but it looks like we did buy other trucks. So does that mean we're kind of getting away from the Lightnings for a few years?
so they're not available, Kirsten. We can't even
yeah.
get them in. And because of our trucks, like we had even one lineman get stuck in the snow because his truck broke down. So we have to have functioning trucks. So we're still in the queue to get Ford F-150s, but we're also looking at the GMC. Is that right, Jerry? Because they're coming out with one as well. They've been having issues with Ford F-150 in cold weather. And that's the last thing we want is to experiment when we've got folks out in the cold. So, but we are on the list.
Okay, so but we did buy several trucks and I totally get why we needed them. I don't know the life of a truck and I don't know how many trucks we have in our fleet. So this is, I think in operations, it was 3 trucks. In Pagosa, it was 2 trucks. Is it going to be a year before, and then we'll see another few trucks? Is that how this is going to work? I'm not recalling our capital budget.
Yeah, Jerry has a rolling, every year he's put all these trucks on his schedule and he's on mute. So I'll let him answer.
Yeah, I'm currently in the process of creating a schedule to replace all of our equipment, and that's from trailers to wire pullers, take up reels, all the way to our big trucks, our buckets and digger trucks. They go off of a number of things. The policy that we have in place, it's a combination of miles, hours, and years. And, for a lot of our equipment, yeah, it's got a 60-year lifespan. So I'm trying to take it out that far to create a schedule so it is easier. So the following year, you know exactly what you're going to need to budget for.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Another thing that's in the appendix is the fire mitigation annual report. And is somebody going to spend a few minutes on that later today, or do we need
we're
to do
going to
that now?
schedule another time to review that during the board.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so you just got the report in here, but we'll take a look more at it later.
Yep.
Some other time. Okay, super. And then my last one is on your expense report, and it's more of a question. I think it's for Sue. Sue, remind me why you've asked to see these, or why we've asked to see these at the board.
It had been part of a policy previously. I know that there were revisions being made to that policy, but I believe it is still part of a policy, and I'd have to look up which one that was, unless Graham knows right offhand. But it was in our policies previously.
Okay. So then my question becomes, if it's part of a policy, this looks more like, I think this is like a credit card expense report, but like Jessica, you just said you were in DC, and we're not seeing flights to DC, and we're not seeing the hotel in DC and such, because I assume that's paid directly from the co-op to you. But I'm wondering if are we supposed to be seeing those as expenses, or is that not what the intent of that policy was? And it's totally a question.
Yeah, that's Graham. This has come up before, And it's just expenses not budgeted, I believe, Graham, or something. Graham has the answer.
The resolution for the memberships. I'm sorry, I had another procedural matter I was.
No,
Oh.
Graham.
Sorry.
He's asking about the CO expense report that is quarterly that I put in there.
Mhm.
And Kirsten's asking about the expenses shown that doesn't include like the airfare in the car.
Okay, yes, let me,
You can come back to this. I just am trying to understand, one, why we're seeing it at all. And Sue, thank you for helping me with that. And then two, if we are seeing it, are we seeing the right level of detail? And Graham, you could answer it after Joe's question or later today. Thank you.
okay, thanks.
Okay, Joe.
Yeah, just a couple of questions on the consultant and contractor report. On the, let me say, I think I've asked this before and I apologize for forgetting, but we've got a second legal expense down there, and it's not Matt, it's another group. And what are we using those? What are we using that firm for?
You want me to get that, Graham?
Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
Sure. Okay, so we, I believe originally that it's also related to power supply, and Graham, correct me if I say anything silly, but Matt had a conflict at one stage regarding crossover. So we had to engage a different firm to help us looking at that agreement.
That's correct. Yeah. So, yeah, we needed to find additional counsel to work with us on the PPA with crossover.
Okay, pretty substantial conflict, it looks like, from the amount, but and then my second question is, and I'm just trying to understand, what we're bringing in-house and what we can, and what we're contracting out. The two, one is line locating and one is ROW and staking, and that's, $800,000 between those two. Can you explain? I thought that was kind of work that we were able to do.
Good question, Joe. Dan, do you want to answer that, please?
The right of way and staking, we do work with another firm outside to acquire some of those. Especially working with Forest Service and tribal lands, they help us with those. We do a lot of our right of way for the private with in-house use there. So which page are you on with that right of way?
The contract.
It's 106 of 107.
Let me just read more details on that. I'll come back.
Joe, a lot of it is because we do a lot in-house. We just don't have enough staff to do all the load work. There's a lot of work out there, and we'd have to contract it out to get it done. But Dan has been looking at adding more FTE to reduce the number of contractors we have, because we do spend a lot of money on them. We'd like to bring some of that in-house, which would actually be more cost-effective for us. So we are looking at that.
And then, so like the right-of-way stuff, is that related to the new power line for Pagosa Springs and along the highways? Or what does that actually include?
It's everything. Anytime we add a new power line, we have to have a right-of-way to put it there. And then whenever we even modify power lines, sometimes we didn't have right-of-ways there previously, and we have to go reestablish them. And then there's reoccurring and renewals of right-of-ways that happen consistently with Forest Service and tribal lands.
So it's a lot of research on who owns the right-of-way and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and what I want to double check on that is that if that actually includes right-of-way payments or if that's all just labor. So let me do some looking on that.
So we actually have to, yeah, we pay for some right-of-ways too.
Absolutely.
So, okay, thank you.
Okay, Kirsten, did you have another question?
Yeah, I sure do. Joe, I appreciate you, because I know you're always going to take a really good look at this report. Because of that, I pretty much just do a cursor report. So I want to tell you guys that the Circle Z Construction LLC for the type, I thought it said dirty work and boring. So I was thinking, oh, this is where we get our dirty, boring work to. So I just wanted to share that. And Joe, thanks again for the detail you do bring to that report.
Well, true confession, it's like the really only part of the financial reports that I really understand, so.
And Joe, just looking at that, it also includes the staking. So it's the line design and the right of way. The right of way is probably the smaller portion of it. Most of it's going to be line design.
But Joe, to your point, it's a good observation. And again, we are making sure we're looking through the contractor reports and seeing where we can bring more work in-house to lower costs. So, okay. Oh, Ted or Tim, before we, and then Carl needs to give his presentation before we run out of time as well. So go ahead, Tim.
So this is since we're on the contractor report, the tree trimming, there's only one line item on that, and the value for 2022 seems similar to values in years past, but I thought we had increased significantly that work. So was that work, if it was increased significantly in 2022, was that carried out by in-house, or, I mean, how does that relate to previous years' costs in this regard?
Good question. Jerry, do you want to answer that one?
Our tree trimming contract is based off of T&E. And so it's just the hourly rate that changed. The work is going to increase. But what it's going to do is just expand the time frame of which this work gets completed. Right now, we've always had a 5-year rolling schedule for all of our circuits. They have been able to complete that work within 3 years for the past couple contracts that we've had. Now it's going to be expanded back closer to the 5-year mark just because of the additional work involved.
Okay, so that dollar value is similar to years past, or is it an increase?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And so there was I think that went back out to bid in 2022, is that correct?
Yep.
And without naming names or anything, but was it the same company that was reestablished, or was there, in the response to those bids, were they different companies?
So we had three companies in our that had signed up with to be a qualified bidder through our vendor page. We reached out to all three and we got 2 applications. They were extremely competitive in their bidding, and with the knowledge base of our current trimmers that we have, it put them miles ahead of the other contractor.
So we settled on one contractor out of the 3 qualified, and it's the same one that we've been using?
Correct.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Jerry, for the info.
Yep.
Okay,
All
Carl,
right.
why don't you present? Oh, go ahead, John.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, I was late. I had an unavoidable conflict. Tim, thank you for subbing in for me. Happy to sort of drive the bus from here on out. So yeah, any last comments on division dashboards before we go to Carl for finance? Cool. All right, onward.
Thanks, John. I managed to hit my camera just at the point I'm meant to speak. Typical. Okay, let me share my screen real quick. And oh, it's doing that thing again, isn't it? So you say, which one is it?
Display settings in the upper left there, Carl.
Oh, that's right. And it's duplicate the slideshow.
Actually, the other one.
So that's not working.
Whatever you did work.
There it is. That works.
Yeah,
Perfect.
cool.
Okay, go.
Every week, every month. Okay. All right, December financials. So lots of green tick goodness. so we hit all of our financial goals in December, and bear in mind that we did that while increasing the rate stabilization fund by $2.75 million that you guys voted on last month. So we were able to hit all of our targets for margin. Obviously cash was not affected, but MDSC, OTIR, all of those margin dependent goals were not shaken by the that increase to the rate stabilization fund, which I think was a really good move by the board, because we are going to be prepared for whatever, you know, rate pressures throw at us in the next in the coming year or two. So all of these goals were met. I confess to being a little nervous on the day we were collating the results, but everything worked out. So, and by some distance, I shouldn't worry so much, I guess, is the lesson I learned. Cash is pretty close to the bottom of our range, but we are in range. I mentioned in the KRTA report the debt has been going down every year since 2017, and we are getting to the point where we're going to need to refinance probably towards the end of Q1. So we only look at this one each quarter. How did we do against the budget? And Q4 is a little deceptive, because obviously that includes that 2.75 million. Without it, we'd actually be pretty close. In fact, I think we'd be above this target. So we overall, the operating margin was about $500,000 below what we had budgeted. But once again, that's really dependent on the 2.75 million. So here are our highlights, and these, oh, let's go. They're so good, I just didn't want you to look at them. This is for the full year, not just December. So total operating costs, and that's the top line, what we call the controllable costs. Tim and I exchanged some emails yesterday. If you look at costs as a whole, they're actually above budget because of the other, I think it's other deductions where the 2.75 million lives. Labor costs, where I'm saying total, that's capitalized and budgeted. We got that pretty much spot on with our forecast. So great work by the managers and my team in their budgeting for that, which other than cost of power is obviously our biggest cost. Delinquent accounts, the Giving Tree helped. I think some people are struggling, and the Giving Tree really helped to keep that very low. It's actually gone even lower in January as the Giving Tree campaign continues. Electric sales were 5% above forecast, mainly driven by our industrials, which drove gross margin to be 2.1% above forecast. The only orange or yellow is the operating margins being below forecast, but that's kind of the last bullet refers to why that happened. The 2.75 million added to rate stabilization. So I know I've gone a little quickly there, but we met all the targets. Hooray. Any questions? Don't see any. Oh, back to you, John.
I got to tell you, Carl, I see a lot of these things. Man, that is impressively accurate. I mean, for you guys to post up within basis points across the board, I mean, that is just impressive management. So very nice work to both you and the whole team.
Thank you, John.
Okay. No further questions for Carl. Let's push on to item 5, board action agenda. Let's open that with the Finance and Audit Committee update. Sue, are you driving that?
I am, thank you.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My report is in our board packet, but basically Carl just covered 99.9% of it. So overall, again, our financial situation is in very good condition. The only one comment I want to make that I did not have in my report is that there will not be a committee meeting in February. So the next Finance and Audit Committee will be in March, and we should have our audit by then. Holly, did you have a question?
Thank you, Sue. I am so sorry I haven't been able to come to these. I really enjoy them. I got excited when I saw Carl is pulling in an auditor that's going to help him really look at how we're itemizing the, the labor and stuff like that. I thought it was really exciting. Even though I also think Carl could probably teach some of those guys some things too. So thank you for that, Carl, for taking that extra step.
We agreed at the Finance and Audit Committee, both Tim and I had questions for Carl regarding the audit, but it sounds like he has it very well under control, and we'll have at least a preliminary by March and should have the full report to the board in April. And that's all I have if there are no other questions. Hey, it's back to you, John.
Great, thanks, Sue. Okay, and that's how it's done, by the way. Nice work. Committee on Policies, update. Ted?
Thank you, John. So the only business item or action item coming out of Committee on Policies right now is the approval of the line extension policy. It's the only one, but it's a big one. Looking at page 61 in the board packet, this is the memo that we've seen a couple of times already. I'm just going to page down to the second page. Very brief rundown on how we got here. Staff brought this to the board, to Finance and Audit Committee, to Committee on Policies. Substantial work has been done at all those levels. Additionally, we scheduled and held a committee of the whole specifically related to this. And it should also be noted that the our policy 364 requires public comment period on a policy change like this because it is considered a tariff. There are member charges involved in it. So we held that 30-day comment period. And let's see, coming out of Committee of the Whole, we had almost a final version. Later that day on December 12th, Graham and Kohler worked on some verbiage issues that were resolved to both of their satisfaction. And then the only update since then is that yesterday Graham sent out a new final version with the only change being to eliminate, a trivial thing, some asterisks in the final attachment or appendix that were no longer required because we weren't referencing any other documentation. So with that, we're at the point where we can go ahead and hopefully get this approved. I'm going to take the liberty of making the motion because it is slightly modified from what you see in the memo based on the most recent distribution by Graham. So I'm going to move that we approve the proposed line extension policy as presented by Graham to the full board in his email on December 17th.
January 17th.
January 17th. Thank you for the correction.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. John, take over.
Yeah, sorry, struggling with the mute button. Yeah, thank you. So so floor is open for discussion on the motion. Kohler, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just want to make sure if John Lee is actually able to vote, because he did send me a text saying that he'd like to have us carry forward a proxy for him, which I know that I don't believe we can do that, but maybe he's still on the phone. So if you could double check that, please. He is in favor of the policy, by the way.
Yeah.
I'd see him. Just give him a second. I see his little icon flicking on and off. He may not be the place where he can.
Okay, good.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Thanks, Cole.
Going to be able to vote.
Excellent. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Then if we could get a show of hands, for all in favor, put your hand up, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstained? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, guys. Any other items, Ted, coming out of your committee?
No, nothing further at this time.
Cool. All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on to item C, 2023 Roundup Foundation Director Appointments. Good times. Who wants to coordinate this one? We have a couple of, I think that we're going to go through each one or do it as a slate. Which one, Graham? Are we going to vote on each one or we do it as a slate?
If we want to do it as a slate, that's fine. If I don't think there's any problem with that. Appears that the proposed motion language is for a slate. Somebody wants to make it a motion as proposed.
Okay. So who's doing this? I'm sorry. Before we go to the motion, is it who's our board? Who's driving for this?
Graham, do you want to
agenda item?
Yeah, I can take this on. So just to kind of, I know everybody's probably reviewed the memo, but we have some vacancies coming up on our Roundup Foundation board under the Roundup Foundation bylaws. The directors of each district nominate the candidates for their own district, and so we've opened up for the first time that I'm aware of our application process to solicit input from the general public in participating, and we got a lot of really strong applications and a lot of good interest, and the directors from each district have all coalesced around some nominations as outlined in that memo. So I think would consider that memo to be the action of the directors of each district referring the names to the whole board. And so we can just have a slate motion if somebody wants to make the stated motion language from the memo.
Terrific. Okay, I just want to make sure this was introduced properly. Did you have a comment, Tim? I'm sorry, Tim, go ahead, please.
So I move to appoint the director nominees for the 2023 Roundup Foundation Board as follows. Cheryl Aarons for District 2, Allison Hillis and Lindsay Nicholson for District 3, and Jane Dunn for District 4.
Great, thank you, Tim. Can we get a second?
A second.
Joe, second it. Okay, so open the floor for discussion on the motion.
Yeah, I think it was a good idea to open this up the way we did. We got I don't know, I think we had 8 in District 3. So I think it's good that people know that this is available, and everyone said, wow, this is a way I can serve the community. So I hope this is the way we go forward. And then the other just quick thing, is there any way to get a note out to the folks who weren't selected, just to say thank you? And great, thank you.
Yeah, we can do that. Good idea.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe. Any other remarks before we vote? Okay. All in favor of the motion, hold a hand up, say aye.
All right.
Thank you. All opposed?
Aye.
Any abstained? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. All right, and congratulations to the new Roundup directors. It's a great program, and glad to have you aboard. Moving on to item D, review voting district boundaries.
And I can take this one on as well, John. Under our bylaws, we're required to review and revise, if necessary, our district boundaries at least 60 days before our election. So on December 9th, our IT department reanalyzed this data for us. Note that everything is within about 0.5% of each other, of being a quarter. It's be hard to imagine a district that is more evenly distributed and yet still sort of makes sense geographically, right? Sort of like dividing blocks in half and things of that nature. So staff's recommendation is that no action is required, that according to the bylaws, we only need to review this, but no, we don't think any revision is necessary. So that would just be sort of report received unless anybody feels that they need to make a motion to amend these districts in any way.
I don't have a motion. I just have a little clarifying question. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is for me. Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
So on the map, on the map for, I'm just looking at it here on the map for District 3
Mm-hmm.
is, there's red in there and there's pink in there. And what is that? Is it not a contiguous district?
So yeah, so red is the municipal boundaries of the city of Durango. So if you see the pink, there's some like open space there, like you can see Lake Nighthorse.
Yeah.
Fairly obviously shaped there, and then it looks like probably Horse Gulch is sort of the other pinkish shape, which I think are technically within the city limits of the city of Durango, but probably don't receive a lot of density of electrical service. Is that right, Drew?
That's right. Yeah, that is still all part of District 3 though.
But they're not contiguous. So there's a green patch between some of those pink patches. Is that right?
Yep. And that's due to the city limits.
Because the city limits isn't contiguous?
Right.
Correct.
Okay, sorry for that little technicality. It was just a curious map to look at. Thank you.
Yep. Any other comments?
All right, so at this point, I would just have the minutes reflect that the board conducted its review and no action was taken.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, pushing on to CREA, NRECA, and Western United annual meetings. This is you, Jessica. You want to introduce this?
Yeah, I'll have Graham wrote the memo on this too, I believe. So
yeah.
Okay.
Graham, you want to take this one?
Yeah, and as we addressed sort of earlier in the meeting under the Director Travel and Training requests, it's time for us to renew this so we can get our paperwork in for our formal delegates. But as indicated, there were several other directors that indicated interest in attending this in their LPEA capacity as opposed to as an official delegate. Say where we are currently, we have John Lee as our CREA and Western United annual meeting representatives, and Holly Metzler as our alternate, and the inverse for our NRECA, where Holly is the delegate and John Lee is the alternate. Again, if people want to self-nominate to express their interest in this, and that's fine. If we want to vote as a slate, or if we want to vote each position individually, that's sort of up to the board on how it wants to proceed.
Kirsten, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question, Graham. I'm not sure I understood what you said. Did you say currently we have delegates already, or currently those are who the representatives are to those organizations?
That's
Holly
who
being CREA.
These are our delegates from last year's annual meeting. So if we just wanted to if everybody agreed, the delegates agreed to reserve and the board wanted to resend the same delegates
see.
again this
Okay.
year,
Thank-
that was who. So sometimes, this is our shareholders meeting as opposed to our regular board meeting. A good example would be, I think this year, Tim Wheeler is our director for Fast Track, but I believe you, Kirsten, showed up to be the voting member at the Fast Track annual meeting. We have something similar that happens with Tri-State. Kohler is our monthly director that attends board of director meetings, but we often send a different director to the Tri-State annual meeting to vote our shares. So this is the annual shareholder meeting, as it were. Have a follow-up question, Kirsten?
No, not a follow-up question, but I think I sent an email to folks. I am available to serve as any of these delegates if needed and willing and would like to.
Great, thank you. Sue, go ahead.
Right, thank you. And I too would be willing and like to serve as either a delegate or alternative to CREA Western United. I will not be able to go to the NRECA conference. So in light of that, I'd like to nominate Kirsten as the NRECA delegate for the annual meeting and as an alternate for Western United. I don't know if I could do both at the same time or if we want to do one at a time.
I think together is fine. Excellent, thank you. Let's see, can I get a second on that? Or Kirsten?
Yep. Looks like
I'll-
Kohler
I'll
seconded.
second that, but then I have a question.
Okay, all right. I saw Kohler's hand up for the second, so the motion is on the floor. Let's restrict the comments to Sue's motion, and then we can come back out of the if you have a discussion outside of her outside of Sue's motion.
No, this is about that motion.
Go ahead,
Because
please.
it's for the so it's for the NRECA annual meeting. Just a reminder to folks, Bob, you were our Region 7 representative, and I wonder if it might make sense for you to be at the annual meeting. If not, that's great. I just want to give you a chance in case it makes sense for you to be the NRECA delegate.
Well, I wasn't
Since you were-
the Region 7 rep last year. I think Tim was.
Okay.
Is that right,
So
Tim?
does it make sense?
Last September, the region, I think NRECA Region 7 was in Portland last September.
That's correct. I was appointed by the board. I, in fact, did not make it there. I ended up with a schedule conflict, and Jessica was the representative because she was the alternate. So
thanks, Kirsten.
Okay, that was my comment.
Excellent, thank you. Okay.
So could you repeat the motion, please? What was the motion?
Graham, do you have the motion?
I was going to see if Sue would repeat it, but as I understood it, it was for Kirsten to serve as the CREA delegate and the Western United alternate, and you to serve as the Western United delegate. Okay, good. Thank you. Please repeat it.
It was for Kirsten to be the NRECA delegate,
Okay.
alternate for CREA, an alternate, no, the delegate for Western United. I think I added one in there, but
And then
so no one is nominating someone for the CREA delegate?
I would like to be that one personally.
I think she was hesitating to nominate herself, and
there's absolutely nothing wrong with nominating yourself.
Okay, so I would like, perhaps somebody, Kohler, could amend the motion to include Sue as I think is the objective of the discussion. But that's your choice, Kohler. Kohler, go ahead, please.
I will do just that, to put Sue as the delegate for CREA and the I think that was all, right? And the alternate for W or
Alternate
Western United?
for Western, yeah, alternate for Western United.
Yeah, I think I'll put Sue's name forward.
Okay, so let's repackage that up and get the language right so we have something we can vote on. So the full package, Graham, could you echo it back for everybody?
All right, so we have Kirsten as NRECA. We don't currently have an alternate nominated for that. We have Sue for CREA with Kirsten as the alternate and Kirsten for Western United with Sue as the alternate. So if we would want to have a full slate, we could probably add in one nominee for NRECA alternate, and perhaps as Tim indicated, right, you know, Jessica was able to serve as as the alternate for the regional meeting. So, you know, if we really need to, we could have staff as an alternate.
And my understanding is Jessica's already going to be at NRECA.
That's correct.
So just from an efficiency standpoint, that's probably a good idea. Holly, go ahead.
I'll second that motion.
So the current slate would be Kirsten as NRECA delegate with Jessica as an alternate, Sue as CREA delegate with Kirsten as an alternate, and Kirsten as Western United delegate with Sue as an alternate.
Great. So we have this, do we have it all packaged up so we're doing everything all at once?
I think if there's no further discussion, you could vote on that slate of candidates.
Excellent. All right, any further discussion then? Okay, all in favor, hold your hands up, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
All abstained? All right,
Was
thank you.
Was there an I for opposed? No, okay.
No, it was later, right? It was
It
just
was not, that was Don Lee unmuting late.
Okay, thanks, John.
cool. All right. That is section 5. Jessica, what's a quick update on Matt's timing?
Sure, but we have one more resolution to go through.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. All right, so last item, I was incorrect. Okay, so last item is item F, resolution authorization to join and renew memberships. So who wants to introduce this?
Graham?
I can keep rolling on this, yes. So as you may recall from past years, we have done an annual authorization to delegate memberships to the CEO. We've always sort of decided to do this annually as opposed to an ongoing basis. I think Jessica circulated a list of our current memberships and one potential membership she has an interest in possibly exploring joining, and perhaps one membership she's considering not renewing. But hopefully everybody has that information, but this is a pretty standard annual resolution that we do in January each year.
Okay. Discussion. Joe, go ahead. Or sorry, not necessarily discussion. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen that I remember seeing this, so sorry to bring this up now, but I'm all for us joining organizations that have to do with local promotion and local work and anything electric power related. I am concerned about joining overtly political organizations, and I state specifically as Club 20. I was looking at their website yesterday, and they do things that I don't think we should be involved with. They're talking about endangered species. They're talking about airport security, Denver Basin aquifer, hunting and fishing regulations. And it's a very long list of the things that they are working on. And anything that an organization, a political organization like this endorses, and if we're on the list, we endorse, I mean, we in fact endorse that also. And I don't think that's something we want to do. So I'm not sure how we want to discuss this, but I would like to remove Club 20 from our memberships. I just don't think it's a fit for us. Their only mention of energy is about basically mineral extraction, and they don't mention solar or wind. And so I would like to discuss removing Club 20. I just don't see how they're helping us. And you know, you're known by the company you keep, and I'm afraid we could get ourselves, you know, if we start commenting, if they you know, make some proposal on some endangered species and we're dragged into that, I'm not sure what the legal implications are of that. And again, that's just not something that we should be involved in.
Fair enough. I think there's so I think there's okay, let's come back to your comment. So thank you for your comment. Let's hear from everybody else. Tim, go ahead.
Thanks. So not to dismiss Joe's concerns, but I move we approve resolution 2023-01, CEO authorization to join and renew memberships as presented. And one comment just on what Joe made was our membership with both NRECA and CREA involve taking political stances on legislation and many other things. So if you want to, if we as a board want to pick these, then we should reject this motion. If we want to leave it in the purview of the CEO who's most closely aligned with the impact of these, then I think we should pass this motion. Thank you.
Okay, so can I get a second for Tim?
Second.
Great. Ted, thank you. So let's choke down the conversation to just the motion at hand. And then Joe, we can return to you if you have a broader set of discussions you want to pick up.
Well, just to comment on what Tim said, you know, NRCA and CREA are electric, you know, are based on electric, it's based on our work. And so yeah, that's why I mentioned them, that, you know, yeah, they are political, but we're connected to the work that they do specifically. You know, they're not talking about bear hunting regulations in Western Colorado. So I just want to make that clear, that I'm not saying that we shouldn't belong to CREA or NRECA. Club 20 is the only thing on that list that I see on there that we don't have any business belonging to.
Great. Fair enough. Thank you. Let's continue the conversation around Tim's motion. Sue, go ahead.
Thanks. Jessica, maybe give us a reason as to why she wants to be part of the Club 20, because I think that Joe makes some valid points. You know, NRECA and CREA are definitely electric focused, and their issues resolve around that. But I'd like to hear maybe Jessica's point of view as why she feels like it might be important to be part of the other.
Okay, hang on a second, Jessica. So I think a couple people, myself included, want to sort of comment on Joe's question of this particular item. Just as a process, can I suggest that we finish the discussion about whether or not to approve the motion to authorize her to do that, and then I think the board if I'm understanding you, Sue, and you, Joe, correctly, want to provide her with some guidance on what we think is a good idea. Which I think is distinct from, are you authorized to make these decisions? Do I have that right? Okay.
That would be my understanding. Yeah, that.
Okay.
That.
So let's keep the conversation restricted down to, are we going to give Jessica the authorization to join and renew memberships as the motion is presented? And then we can come back up to Joe and Sue's comments. So given that, does anybody have any further question or further comments on the motion at hand? Okay, all in favor, hold your hand up and say aye.
Aye.
Terrific, thank you. All opposed? All abstained?
And Joe, is it,
Joe, are you counting? Joe, did you vote? You voted aye? Or yes, thank you. Okay, so the motion passes. Okay, so Jessica, you have the authority to join and renew memberships. I think there is a desire here to express some opinions on the matter. And I think this is a perfectly, I think it's okay if we take a minute or two and communicate that. I think, Joe, you articulated that you think that one particular one, the group 2020, the club 20 is not a great club for us to get, or membership for us to continue. Do you have anything to add to that? And then maybe Jessica can comment on it.
Well, again, just that I think we have to stick in our business, in our basically staying in our lane. And I'm really, and Club 20 does get involved in some, they have their place, and I've read about them and followed them for years. And they have they can make some pretty controversial stands, and it's just not something that we need to be dragged into. They also don't even list who the other members are in their on their website. But I'm just again, I don't think that belonging to Club 20 brings us any value.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you for
our members, and I'm talking for our members. So
yeah, got it. Thank you for that opinion, Jessica. I think, do you have a thought on this? You want to opine on this as well before we go too deep down this, or just sort of leave the input as is?
Well, I would just say I appreciate folks commenting, because it is helpful, and I come back to when I did join that one group, Next Gen, and Sue and Kohler expressed concerns. I appreciate all of you looking at those and thinking through those, because I want to give some of these organizations time. And I think you saw in my note, I don't want to bring this up in a public session, but one of the groups I would like to leave, because sure enough, it did not materialize as I had hoped to further our efforts. So thanks for those comments, Joe. I really appreciate that. This group was actually a holdover when I started. It was one that we had just paid. And so, and in the beginning, I was asked to actually sit on a panel and speak to a progressive view of cooperatives, but that was 3 years ago. And so to your point, I think that their goal and their efforts have changed. It doesn't mean we don't have to participate in their events if they have energy events, but I think you're right, they have moved somewhat away from pure energy. So thank you for the feedback. That is very helpful in us deciding if it's a good use of member money.
Great, thank you. And just to make sure that we're cool. Okay, I'm sorry, Joe, is your hand still up to communicate?
Yeah. How much is that membership?
Carl, I want to say it's around like $500. It's not a lot of money.
That sounds right, Jessica. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think you're right.
Okay.
And it's not the money that I'm objecting to, so.
Okay. Yeah, I think we
need a further discussion on this later, but
okay. I think we got the guts of that particular one. And I just want to make sure that Sue, you got your comment in earlier. Did you have anything else to add to that?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, all right, and then Dan, did you have a thought here to add as well?
Yeah, they've done a lot of good things for the economic development of the whole Western Slope region, highways. They've worked on broadband, and I think they still can be working on broadband and maybe helping secure funds for some of the stuff that we're interested in. So I think they are a good asset to be able to go to and get some support if we need it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dan. Okay. Excellent. Well, that was a valuable discussion, and the motion was passed. So let's push on. Yes. So we are right on time. So why don't we take the 10-minute break, and we will see you guys at 10:41. Thank you. All right. Okay, so we're on item Roman numeral 6, attorney update of FERC actions.
Thanks, John. It's nice to see all of you. We'll do a pretty quick public update here. I think we have a fair amount to talk about in executive session. And given what I'm about to say, you know, we're going to have a lot of litigation, attorney-client privilege discussions that need to happen. So that'll be part of the reason for a briefer public update. On December 22nd, FERC rejected the contested settlement that LPEA and Tri-State and many other members had supported to allow for the BDP, or the partial buyout. I can take some questions to the extent, you know, they're appropriate to have in public forum. I think the one thing I want to emphasize here is, you know, this case will move back into a litigation posture. I do want to note that it shouldn't be read as a United Power triumph. It should be read as there was a change in the bench at FERC. You know, Chairman Glick is moving on. Willie Phillips is now the acting chair. There's now an open spot on FERC. When that happens, there tends to be, you know, a clearing of the decks, so to speak. And this settlement was part of that because it was still pending, and obviously it had been pending for a long time. We can talk about next steps and what timing looks like in the case. All of that is going to be attorney-client privilege, so I prefer not to talk about it here until the time is right. But happy to take any questions from the group before we move on to that update in executive session. Joe.
Yeah, I thought Glick was on our side, was my understanding. And just because we cleared the deck now, I'm just wondering what that means.
You know, there's a big backlog of things. You know, this case is just one of, you know, thousands of cases that FERC has in front of it. When there's transitions, I think that you know, things that have an element of controversy, in this case, you know, one of the members contesting the settlement, you know, they tend to send it back to hearing procedures as opposed to approve it over the objection, you know, out of the concern that would drive potential future litigation. There'll be a change in the makeup of FERC. Commissioner Phillips is a great regulator. I know him. And I think he will do a great job, and I think he will give these issues a very fair evaluation when he's given the opportunity. Ted.
Yeah, just a public session comment, you know, and I think maybe John was the only one that wasn't attending at the time, but we did have a member comment just this morning, you know, talking about exactly this issue. So the knowledge, you know, the general knowledge is in the public domain. And I think it really is incumbent upon us to, you know, maybe not the right word choice, but get ahead of that. More and more, I think this will become newsworthy. So it's really important, I think, for all of us to understand, and especially Matt, as we go into executive session, help us as best you can understand where we are, where we're going, what the options are. And then I think, we need to give guidance to staff in terms of how to proceed, and kind of not only long-term how to proceed with this in mind, but also short-term how to proceed in terms of, what we're putting out in the public. So just a comment. Thank you.
Yeah, and just, one reaction to that, Ted, that I think is appropriate for a public comment, just from my perspective as a regulatory lawyer. This case will move back into a litigated posture, but that doesn't mean another resolution can't be reached and can't be reached in a timely way. I think that's an important thing for people to understand. I think the other thing that's important to understand is that the way that the strategy has unfolded here resulted in a constructive working relationship with your wholesale provider. And that constructive working relationship remains, and that's something that can continue to be, acted upon as we move forward. And not having an antagonistic relationship with your supply is important in the power business, in my experience. So I think that there's opportunity to continue conversations. Obviously, there's going to be conversations in that vein that are going to occur. Tim, I think you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat what Ted said. I do want to echo his support for what he said. I've had a lot of questions from members about what's the implication of this. And so it's unclear to me at what level is public or not public. And so I hope that we can come out with a statement, a clarifying statement very soon about what this means and what our options are and what members can reasonably expect sooner than later. So thanks.
Just on that point, Hillary is going to pen a update article in our monthly newsletter to give that update. We had been updating the public in all the newsletters. I think the last update, Hillary, was in December. Is that right?
It was in November.
So we'll give another one with this recent. We try to give an update whenever there's a recent action at FERC. So that's a good suggestion. Thanks, Tim and Ted. Kirsten, did you have a question for Matt?
Yeah, Matt, I'm going to ask my question in public. I don't know if your answer can be. So yesterday, the Mountain Parks announced that their 2-year notice with the tri-state and that they're planning on leaving. Now, they were the BDP folks, I think. Any impact on us that you can talk about in public on that?
I'm not aware of that there's any impact. Obviously Mountain Parks will have to work through that process. That's their choice in terms of how they determine they wanted to move forward in the aftermath of this, but no specific impacts. The CTP has been issued, a decision has been issued by a judge. It is fully briefed, and that's now in front of FERC. That formula could potentially change. So I think that's just an important thing for the public to be aware of as well. John?
Yeah, thanks. One suggestion, one comment. Hillary, perhaps it might be helpful if you and your team were able to construct a 1 or 2 sentence soundbite that the board members can have at the ready. So when we do get asked sort of ad hoc, informally, we're out to dinner or at an event, you just say, hey, what's going on with it? And we can do a better job of speaking with one voice. I don't think that has to be a deep dive. Just, 1 or 2 sentences, I think, would be useful to all of us. Number two, and this is, again, an observation to you, Matt. I think that the fact that we have a constructive relationship with Tri-State is a small part of a result of how we've managed the issues with Colorado PUC and then FERC and then litigation in the back down. But what I really think is that's just a small part of really a 3+ year effort by Jessica and the staff who've worked very, very hard to develop that, most of which happens behind the scenes and in conversations and in how you communicate or how we communicate with them. And I don't think that that's a derivative of the fact that we litigated, chose to litigate, chose not to litigate, moved to FERC, fought FERC, didn't fight FERC. It's really, I think, more about a bigger picture. And I want it stated clearly that our working relationship with Tri-State is a result of Jessica and the team's work, not of our litigation stance.
Completely agree with that. And I think that's well said. And I agree with every word of that.
Okay, thank you. Cool. All right. Well, I will put my hand down and return.
Tim.
So one of the things that I'm a little unclear as to whether or not can be disclosed as a director to our members is the timeline or calendar associated with these different prongs, right? One being, what is that timeline? I've been shown a couple different timelines from various sources around BDP, and then how it stacks up against CTP. And I'm not necessarily asking for an answer right now, but I think this needs also to be kind of outlined somehow for our members. An example would be a question around CTP's course of action. How is that different than being rejected as a BDP settlement, for example, right? So is there a different statutory timeline within FERC for those different avenues, right? So, and that's germane, I think, to members' expectations around when we can operate more independently and with more flexibility in our power supply. And if one is a very long time frame versus another statutorily that is a shorter time frame, this kind of thing has an impact. So I just, somehow we need to get that kind of outlined for our members, in my opinion. So thank you.
Yeah, agreed. And the CTP will probably see a FERC order sometime this summer. I can say that, but that's not the end of the road there. There's going to be requests for reconsideration. The way that case has gone, I would expect DC Circuit litigation. So that could be a fairly long timeline. I think we'll be in a better place to provide a more robust and fulsome timeline after the pre-hearing conference occurs. In the BDP case, we've been sent back to a judge. The judge has requested all the attorneys attend a pre-hearing conference on January 31st. So we'll be attending that. And then at that point in time, the beginnings of a schedule for how things are going to move forward will be developed. But there's also some other moving parts associated with that I really can't disclose right now because I discussed them with counsel under settlement privilege. So that update can come, just not today.
Can I, for other people who have questions, we are on a relatively short timeline with Matt. Can we get into executive session? And if we want to pick up a public discussion at the end of this, we can. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, thank you. So we'll need a motion to move into executive session.
Moved by Ted.
Thank you, Ted. Can I get a second?
Second.
Sue, thank you.
And just to clarify the motion, the topics of the executive session are those that are outlined on the agenda: attorney update on FERC actions and tri-state rate discussion.
Agreed.
Great, thank you. All right, all in favor with a hand up, say aye. All hands, all opposed, all abstained. Two quick questions here. Is there any part of this that we need to manage caller's participation?
Sorry, I was trying to get off mute. I would not include Kohler. for this next piece of it as we talk about going back into the BDP litigation. Thanks for flagging that, John. I think that's
Okay.
good.
And then,
Okay.
and then can we bring him in after that though? Because I think it's going to be important for him to be a part of the kind of this other discussion. The other parts of it. Okay.
Okay. All right. Caller, stand by. We'll tag you. Somebody will tag you when we're ready to come back in. Great. If everybody could take a moment and get into, make sure you have your link.
Thank you.
And we will see you on the other side. Sorry to rush people, but we got to keep him moving along. Okay. Thank you. See you over there. All right. Welcome back. We have no board actions that resulted from executive session. We are still remarkably on time. So I think we have two options here. Just sort of get a quick gut check on everybody. We can take our regularly, our planned lunch break now and return to the reports at 12:30, or we can, if everybody's still got some energy, we can crank through the reports and take lunch after the meeting adjourns. Anybody have an opinion? Yes, power through. Quick thumbs up for power through.
Can we take like 5?
How that sounds like fair compromise. Yes, fair enough. All right, we'll see you guys all at 12:05. And then we'll power through the last section and adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Okay, let's get back in the game. This is, so we're picking up for the last push for the reports, starting with the public attorney report. Graham?
Thank you, John. I just refer everyone to my written report and take any questions. Tim. Oh, I think you're still muted, Tim.
Thanks for catching that. So the meeting that you referred to attending with DOLA and the various counties on broadband development, what was the date of that? When was that meeting?
Let me pull my calendar up real quick.
I'm just curious. I've had a little discussion with Dan Harms and then Fast Track about it, and I'm trying to figure out, what's involved there and so forth. So I don't know if your meeting occurred before or after some other.
It was Monday, January 9th, and Dan went with me. So
okay.
So Dan was there too.
So I got a report from Dan. I think that's sufficient. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, pushing on. Thank you. Tri-State. This is Kohler.
Do you want to do roundup first? Do you want to just go to Tri-State?
Thank you for somebody around here who can actually read, helping the rest of us. Yes, let's try that again. Roundup. Who is presenting for Roundup?
That's going to be me, John.
Thank you.
So my report is in the package. It's on page 71 of 107. I do want to highlight the 4 offgoing members who have been very helpful on the Roundup board: Naomi Dobbs, Caitlin Kimmel, Kara Kropp, and Jessica Wheeler. And all 4 of these has actually done more than just the monthly meetings. They've all had involvement either with some of the new processes trying to get put in. I know Jessica was our point person on SEEK. Caitlin was the president of the board. So all of them have done a lot of work, and I think I want to acknowledge all of their work. The meeting itself, we met, we gave money away. You can see who it is, and you'll also get that great information that Hillary always puts out as far as folks that how much money we gave away. Now Tim, you had asked for questions about the financials, and I think some of that is timing. I know, Graham, you were looking into it. I don't think I have anything back from you as far as answering Tim's question. But so I don't know if you're prepared to answer it or not, Graham.
I am, and I'm sorry, I had that email going around internally, and I think I might have just not have forwarded the answers on to Tim. So if we want, I can forward that email. I think I addressed those questions pretty well. The answer was a lot of them.
Should we just send it, because it's kind of long and lengthy, and
it is pretty detailed. So
it is very detailed, and I think just sending the email would probably be better.
Yeah, I think that's probably the easiest, and then I can continue to sort of answer any follow-up questions that might come out of my response email.
Super, and we can address any questions next month at the same time, same place. Cool.
Exactly.
Any other questions about the roundup report? That's it. Back to you, John.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Now, Tri-State.
Okay, here we go. So this month's board meeting was very, very short. It was actually only about 3.5 hours. I think that's the shortest one I've attended. This one is virtual. We'll have 3 of these during the year. And then we have the virtual ones. We don't have any committee meetings. There was an exception this time in that the executive committee meeting did meet. And the purpose of that was to give us a preview on the strategic planning that will occur next month. And then they went into their litigation committee, and the rest of us are not invited to attend that. During the board meeting, twice during the board meeting, Dwayne Hiley did mention that he's going to do everything in his power not to have a rate increase until January of 2024. And we'll see how well that does. He says he'll just work with the results of 2023 and go forward. But that's what he said twice. So we hope for the best. I don't know what you discussed in the executive committee, but with the RDC, or the Rate Design Committee, and thank you, Kirsten, for being on that, but they will give a recommendation that will be voted on by the full Tri-State Board in March. In preparation for that, what I'm doing is working with the staff at Tri-State and waiting to see exactly what's going to be presented, so I get a real strong understanding of it. I'm also going to work with LPEA staff and get an idea of what is best for LPEA, because I think there's going to be some responsibility on my part as well as opportunity to where there's a decision that might be neutral to Tri-State, and therefore I can really put a bias towards LPEA. So I'll work with staff on that, find that out, and then also build coalitions with my fellow directors. There's some talk going on. A lot of them are, feeling strong about the direct assign. And I think some of them are also feeling pretty strong that we should follow FERC's directives, not challenge them, because all they see is a no-in situation that costs millions of dollars. And then the last thing that I'll mention that was not in the report was an action item that we took. And we did approve Tri-State to apply for a $75 million loan from the Department of Agriculture. And this is the Rural Energy Saving Program, or REST. It is a 0% interest loan, and it goes for 10 years. That can be extended to 20. That's kind of confusing, but if you borrow all the money on the first day, then in 10 years it has to be paid back. If you borrow half of it on the first day, then in 10 years that has to be paid back. And on the very last day of the 10 years, if you borrow the other half, then it goes out another 10 years. So it could go up to 20 years. And on that $75 million loan, $50 million of it would be earmarked for energy efficiency. And they're working on an on-bill financing program. I know we have one, but Tri-State's trying to get one that the rates will be quite a bit better than what the co-ops can get. That might work for us, it might not. And they're coming out with new strategies, because the state is requiring a performance that we have to have a goal. And right now, with our historical performance, we'll only meet 55% of the 2023 goal. So this money will be used to build up the energy efficient program. The other $25 million will be used for a demand response goal. And Colorado will demand 4% under control by 2025. So these are programs that Reg is working with. I think he's working very close with the LPEA staff, and we'll have further things on that as they kind of get developed. Although we approved for them to apply for this loan, it will still come in front of the Tri-State Board for approval of the programs before it can actually go forward. So that's all I have in addition to the report. So I'm open for questions if anybody has any. It's kind of quiet, John.
Count your blessings.
Yes. Oh, there's one, Holly.
There you go. Holly, take it away.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Kohler, thank you so much for your work up there. I would just like to emphasize your point about building coalitions with fellow directors. I think that is so important. And I know that you really take that to heart and are dedicated to it. But it also goes with the overall culture at LPEA because like our Matt Larson has told us that we have laid out constructive relationships with quite a few people. That's going to behoove us into the future. Okay, my last question to the board. Also, there was that USDA IRA REA discussion, the webinar coming up on January 26th. And I really, please, if somebody has the time and the impetus, please somebody register. I'm registered, but I have a CREA meeting at that time. I think it's important. And I think in your report, Kohler, it says something about they're encouraging distribution cooperatives to attend it because it specifically aims at distribution cooperatives. And it's, you know, a stakeholder discussion on IRA funding that's coming down. I think that that was pretty much the end of it right now, but thank you so much, Kohler.
You bet. Thank you for your comments. Kirsten?
Yeah, this is actually a comment on Holly's. Holly, when I saw that, I was hoping that we were going to have a staff person there. So are you going to be there, Jessica, or have somebody there?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, there's like been 30 of these or something,
Okay.
but everybody's hosting them. We will have staff there, but at this point, these are a lot of repeats, but I know Hillary sent around that link to all of us when Holly brought that up, and we'll have a staffer there. But yeah, there's a lot of these and they're very similar. There's not a lot of new information that's come out.
Okay,
but yeah,
thank
we'll
you.
be there.
Tim?
Hey, Kohler, you and I corresponded about the board bylaw review memo, I'm sorry, that was supposedly circulated to us. This is Tri-State board bylaw review. And in the report that comes directly from Tri-State, it says, please ensure your system reviews the memo. So I was curious as to whether we received it and what level of review and who does that, how important and critical that is. You gave some good information, but I think I would still like to hear from staff or perhaps John, I'm not sure, as the chair. I mean, it seems like there's some process within Tri-State where they share their bylaws for review by the members, and maybe there's some opportunity for input. I don't know, I've not seen that before. So, and I've been around, this is my 4th year, so I'm not quite sure. It's probably not important, I guess, if no action has been taken in the past. But is there something we as a board, as a member, should be doing with respect to this? And if so, what is the process for doing that, I guess is my question. And that's probably more than a Kohler question.
And I do think this is just an annual review. I don't think there's anything that triggered it other than just to have this review. I think it's stated in the policy. So I don't know if there's much you need to do unless there's an issue that you're having, and then we can bring it back up and bubble it up to the top. And I don't know if staff has any other comments on it or if they looked it over or not. Doesn't look like it.
Okay, so according to Tri-State, they sent us something, but we don't know who got it or how or what we're supposed to do with it. That's kind of my question.
Well, the memo, and I think I sent that back to you as well, Tim, and I didn't see the memo on my first reply to you, but it goes obviously to the directors. Then it goes to the CEOs of each member and also the board presidents.
All right, well. I guess I'm the only one with any concern around it, so I'll do my own research, I guess. I don't know. It seems kind of odd.
Yeah. So did you have a second question in there, Tim, which is, if I understood it, was you saying, do you, is there a consideration for us to follow their lead and do something similar for our own membership? Was that a question you were asking, or did I misunderstand that?
No, that was not. I mean, we're a member system of Tri-State.
Yeah, right.
They've indicated they sent us something, and
okay,
I'm not sure. It didn't seem like anybody received it. Polar found it, sent it to me, and then on that basis, I'm like, do we need any action? I'm not sure the implication of it at all either. So I'm sort of bringing it up as like, is there an action needed? Who has taken that and reviewed it and brought it to us for anything in the past? It seems like that's not clear. So it's sort of like,
okay. Well, to answer your question, since you addressed me directly, I did not receive anything, or if I did, I deleted it and ignored it and don't remember it. So that's just speaking for me individually.
And Tim, I think one of the comments that you made is this something that we're just checking the box, and I believe that's what it is. And why you probably haven't seen it in the past is we now have a new head attorney at Tri-State, Jay, who replaced Ken. And this is probably one of those things he saw and said, all right, we need to get this in a routine to be approved or to be looked at by the members. My guess is that's why it probably popped up. I don't think there's any other issues.
I guess it triggered for me a concern that, okay, is this the start of some review process at Tri-State upon which, any input that you want to give or issue you might have, we as members have with the bylaws, it's like, here's the period that you can speak up, forget it after that, right? I mean, are we missing some opportunity to influence something that we might want to influence? And the fact that it just popped out of nowhere kind of makes me think like, oh, well, have we been missing that opportunity for a long time? I don't know. There's a level of sort of, well, that's odd. And is this a process upon which if we don't take some action, we lose that ability till the next year or something? It's the implication of it for me is just not clear. Maybe that's something, I guess, Kohler, I would ask you to clarify with Tri-State and these people. I mean, I don't recall this in the past. What triggered it? What is that process if you wanted to respond to it? And what are the parameters of that process? Anyway, that's just my thought. But I guess.
And I'm more than happy to do just that.
Okay.
I can follow up with them and get you some answers on it. You bet.
Thank you much. Sorry to take the time.
You're good. Okay. Pushing on. We good for Kohler? Okay. Kirsten, Tri-State Rate Design Committee.
Yeah, thank you. Drew, you've got a PowerPoint for me?
Yep, sure do. I'll get that going.
Thank you, sir. So you will find my written report on page 84. I think it's 2 pages. But what I wanted to do on my talking report is try to stick to some points. So first slide, if you would, sir. Okay, so I'm going to be summarizing the meeting for you, talking about the the true up method, which is kind of the last remaining point of discussion, talk about the rate structure in general and where we LPEA disagree, and then talk about next steps. And throughout this process, I've been working with Jessica and Dan and Graham a little bit recently on this. So if you guys have any questions about what I'm doing, then I need to know. Otherwise, I'm pretty much just going to tell you what I'm doing, and we'll go from there. So I don't know if you remember that last month we talked a lot about the should we give tri-state board discretion by perhaps inflating some of our financials requirements, and that actually has been totally pulled from the formula. That's dead on arrival. So the only thing that's going to be in rate stabilization are large payments like the BDP, the CTP, or land sales. So I appreciate everybody's discussion last month. There was a lot of excitement everywhere about that, and I think they realized it was just better to get that the heck out of there. Tri-State does have a new council, Troutman Sanders. My understanding is they're good in what they do. They have a lot more experience in the rate filing part of it than the last council did. The last council is kind of what got Tri-State into FERC, but they didn't really have as much experience with, okay, now that we're here, what the heck do we do? And that's where Troutman Sanders comes in. The direct assignment of non-network transmission costs. There's going to be a meeting on February 3rd. It's going to be in addition to the regular rate design committee. It's going to be a subcommittee, but it's a subcommittee of the whole because they didn't want to divide out, well, who's going to be on the subcommittee. So everybody on the rate design committee is going to be on this subcommittee. And what we're going to look at is all the Mansfield tests. And just a reminder, the Mansfield tests are tests that FERC has said you need to apply these tests to transmission assets. And if it passes, if it fails any one of these tests, then it is out of it, then it has to be direct assigned. So they've gone through this exercise. Tri-State is still hoping to not have to put this as part of the rate. And actually that's how the vote has been going, is don't direct assign. Let's just wait and see what FERC does. Kohler, I think you mentioned that this is something that you're hearing folks on the board not be in agreement about too. And I think it's going to be a sticking point.
That's
right,
correct.
Kohler?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to give you a chance if you wanted to put anything in there.
No, I have had that mentioned quite a bit, and then I think that's something we'll be working on in the next couple of weeks with both the Tri-State Board directors as well as LPA staff, so I get a stronger understanding, and they can help me build my case a little stronger.
Okay, super. I appreciate that. So we're continuing, LPA is continuing to advocate for direct assignment, but one of the things that I'm going to be bringing up on February 3rd is direct assignment more palatable if we're can do some sort of a rate shock mitigation, whether this is a sympathy payment, that the 10%, that you give a little bit of the money back that you made, that you've saved, and give a little bit of that money back to try to get the ones who get hit the most, buy them a little time. So we're going to be talking that on February 3rd too. The staff recommended formula. So within the formula, there's several pieces. One of the things that's going to be in it, and this received a lot of positive feedback at the RDC, is a debt service ratio of 1.15 and an equity cap ratio with a 20% minimum. And this is going to be fixed in the formula. This isn't something that the next year the board can say, oh, well, we want to change our DSR. The DSR is going to be this because this is what we need for either our loan requirements, or it's what we need to keep in somewhat good favor with the rating agencies. So this is not going to be what we kind of talked about last month, which was they can play with this to make them a little buffer. This is going to be a fixed amount. So they're looking for a vote. We're looking for a vote to send it to the board in February. And I have March 2 board vote, but it's actually March 1. That was my error on that. So the idea is this goes to the board. They do a, they send it on to FERC within days of voting on it on March 1. And then clocks start, a 60-day minimum clock plus a 5-month clock that that FERC can apply and generally does apply, especially in first time rate submittals. So it's a long clock. And to Kohler's point earlier, nothing is probably going to be able to happen until January 1, 2024. And that is certainly what Dwayne is pushing for. Next slide, Drew. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Any questions on that first slide, guys? Super. Next slide, Drew. Okay, so one of the things that we've just recently started talking about is the true-up method. And there's basically, let me explain what true-up is, and then I'll talk about the two different options. So true-up is if you have a formula rate, at the end of the year, you'll have figured out, okay, well, that was a good formula and we collected enough. We collected our revenue requirements, or we over-collected, or we didn't collect enough. If there's over-collection, that means it's going to be money going back to the members. If there's under-collection, that means that gap needs to be collected in the next year. There's two basic ways that have been floated around. The easiest to administer is put that set amount. Let's say we're $1 million short in year 2024. In 2025, that $1 million will be added to the formula, and then the 2025 rates will reflect that. The problem with that, if member loads shift, then you're collecting from people who did not necessarily make that problem happen in 2024. So I'm advocating for, it's a little more complex, but it's really no more complex than capital patronage allocation, because it's based upon what you bought in that year and your revenues that you brought in that year, and then you're allocated your share of either the refund or the have to pay. And then as far as how it gets paid, do we send a check? Do we pay it off over several months? That's a mechanics that I don't have a dog in the race on at all. It's more about this, when do we reimburse it? I mean, not when, I'm sorry, but how we do it. Is it based upon this year, or do we get it in rates next year? In my report, you'll see that I refer you to a really good thing that Chance did from Northwest Rural District about explaining this, and you may want to look at it, but if I didn't get you a good enough explanation here. Any questions about true up? Excellent, thank you. So I just want to reiterate the rate structure, if you would, Drew. And I'm only going to talk about the places that we disagree. So we disagree until we think we're better than it used to be, but it's still not there. So we're saying, nope, that's not good enough. The energy measurement billing determines there really was no time of use debated much at all. The seasonal elements got totally thrown out. And we think that that's still very important to get to kind of the right size of cost equity. And we're going to keep trying to do it in future formulas. We know that there's going to be revisited in 3 years on that. And then the other place where we disagree is on this direct assignment of non-network transmission costs. FERC recommends it, and it promotes cost equity. And we think it's the right place, but this is where we disagree. And this is why I'm going to be voting no coming out of committee, unless something really weird happens in February. But I'm going to be voting no coming out of committee to the board. Any questions on that? Okay, last slide. I want to tell you the next. Oh, sorry, Tim.
You can finish. I'll have a question at the end.
Okay, super. So next steps, February 3rd, there's going to be the direct assignment meeting I mentioned. February 8th, the RDC vote to send to Tri-State Board should be happening. We have been told if it doesn't happen then to plan on more meetings, because they really want to get it to the board for to send out on March 1. So here I put March 3rd. So it really is March 1, and they're going to be sending it for a start date. We are discussing a possible minority report to do either on our own or with in conjunction with other folks. So as I told you, I'm voting no. People who vote no have an opportunity to present a minority report, and we'll be putting something like that together. That's it for my report. And Tim.
So this is more of a question maybe for the staff. So has there been any kind of regression modeling to kind of see how what is being contemplated might look on our, to our rates, say for 2022 or something? How would that have affected or changed it, plus or minus, on the true up? And I'm particularly concerned around the demand billing kind of thing, the energy demand. Sounds like that's not going to be a component of a formulary rate. Is that correct? Or it seemed to be.
Well, Dan and Carl have done the most work on this. Dan, do you want to respond?
Yeah, so Tri-State did send us, and this doesn't answer your question exactly, they did send us a spreadsheet that showed how LPEA's overall payment for power supply would change, given the various options that they were looking at. But to know what the true up would be, we would have to know, let's see how accurate their budget was, the actual. Right, Kirsten, I believe that works. And I haven't taken a fine-tooth comb to that yet to see what kind of adjustment we would have. That may have been some work that Chance Briscoe did. I want to go review again what he had there on that, because he may have covered that already. What was your second question there, Tim?
Well, yeah, the second question is around demand charges.
Right.
Sounded like energy demand charges wouldn't be a part of that rate anymore, time of use or something. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what Kirsten's slide said, but
no, there would definitely be a formula that dictates what the demand charge is going to be and the energy charge is going to be. But they never had time of use haven't in a long, the way we want it. They haven't had time of use and they haven't had seasonal rates. So that part is not part of the formula, but they will have to.
It's not necessarily changing what exists. It was an opportunity that didn't get taken up.
Yeah, I mean, basically they talked about the tilt and how much goes to demand versus energy. And it's gotten better from our perspective. On how that goes. It could be another point to add to your slides, actually, Kirsten, on because there's the predominance method, the peaker method, and the average excess demand, and those are the different tiers. And they pick the middle level. FERC wants the predominance method that could provide us even more support. So there's yet another thing that if we were to go to maybe the more unbundled structure, you could probably see.
So that would not change our time of use programs and things like that.
If anything, it gives us even more, what they're proposing gives us even more support for having a time of use and time of day pricing than what they previously had. There could be another step that goes beyond that creates even more of an incentive for us to do it. But so it's from that perspective, it's better than what it was, or is today, I should say.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
So Tim, again, that demand piece is part of the tilt. Now we are going to be shortening the demand window by just an hour. And I don't think that really affects us at all. And I don't really know that it's going to affect Tri-State at all. It's just trying to get a little more towards the reality of when the demand is high at Tri-State. Any other questions?
Well, I was just going to comment that it sounds like this will create a more challenging process for budgeting our power costs potentially in the future. I mean, it's not a judgment, it's just an observation. I mean, right now the power costs are relatively stable and not subject to a true up. So as we enter into that scenario, I suspect that will make for a more challenging budgeting process, as well as the likelihood of more frequent rate changes within our territory. Is that
I
correct?
think it'll be more real time, Tim, is ultimately, I mean, the changes will be happening regardless of as cost pressures. And I mean, they're usually changing rates based on their budget. And now we're going to get that live feedback at the end of the year if the budget was off a little bit, moving one way or the other. But we'll take a deeper dive into, you know, how close budgets have been in the past to give a little better feel on where that could lie.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Dan, you mentioned, I'm sorry, Tim. Anything else?
No, I'm just thanking
Sorry,
you.
sir. Okay, you're welcome. The last month we did talk about that spreadsheet that we got sent to look at the rates as they're currently contemplated and what it would have meant for us in 2022 and for years in the past. That is in our shared directory out there. Again, don't try to do it in Google Docs. You'll probably want to download it and try to open it in Excel. And it's just for information. Dan and Carl have really looked at this, but if you kind of want to see oh, wow, our rates would have been lower with this new rate design. So that's what I took away from it. As far as is the true up or not, that's not really going to help us figure out, well, what are we going to have to pay or not pay next year? That's going to happen as it goes. And we'll know at the end of each year. I think that's it for me, John. Questions?
Okay. Thank you. Okay, fast track.
Well, I have the report there. Does anyone have any questions? Or comments? Okay, that was simple.
Excellent. CREA.
Great, thank you, John. So there was not a regular monthly meeting, so you do not have one of those in your board packet. It is not by an accident. I did send out that email with the links to register for the CREA annual meeting, as well as it shows the link for the hotel. The group rate is good through January 30th. So those of you who did request to go to that meeting, please take a look at that. So there was some grumbling about getting legislative updates on Fridays. So now they're to Monday. So Monday, I did get a legislative update from CREA, the first of the year. It says that the legislative session has started very slowly. There hasn't been a ton of bills introduced as of yet. Joe did ask about some more specifics about the electricity resource plan that the ESCO was championing. And CREA has worked with them to get to a point where most, like LPEA, does agree with the current piece of legislation as it is written. So basically what it's going to require is that any load serving entity is going to have to create a report on their resource adequacy, and their own board, i.e. us, will have to take a look at it and approve it. The other option is that a cooperative can designate their wholesaler to create this report for them. All of this information will be consolidated by the Colorado Energy Office for a statewide adequacy report. This ends when there's a wholesale market in place, and some things it's still unclear whether entities like Guzman and who they would be accountable to, if anybody. If tri-state or municipals file for individual members, would they also have to file for themselves? So there's just some ambiguous points in there right now. The CREA Legislative Committee does suggest a support stance on that. There's also HB 23-1005 new energy improvement program changes. It takes a program that's already in place and just kind of modifies it a little bit. It amends the program to include water efficiency and resiliency for financing of commercial properties for energy efficiency. It modifies the entity that oversees that program to streamline the process. That is a suggested monitor position for CREA. SB 2316 greenhouse gas reduction. There was a ton of sections to this one, so I just pulled out a couple of highlights right now. Like, for instance, it would require large insurance companies with 100 million plus in business in the state to complete some sort of a climate risk disclosure survey. They do some changes for para. There's adding wastewater thermal energy equipment to a list of pollution control. It changes the greenhouse gas goals for the state, which was kind of interesting. They have things on injection wells, beneficial electrification tax incentives like lawnmowers. The CREA committee is recommending a monitor position. SB 2317, additional uses of paid sick leave. It would include bereavement or dealing with the death of a family member in the reasons for paid sick leave, and also childcare if the school is closed for like natural disaster or something like that. It's a monitor position as well. There's SB 2332, wildfire detection technology. It would create pilot programs to fund remote camera technology. The CREA is suggesting support. There's also a couple of draft bills on labor requirements. Let me see. Reliable alternative energy sources, specifically small nuke reactors. Part of Polis's budget for this next year includes up to $120 million of clean energy tax credits to help leverage federal funding. Yeah, that's, I think, the biggest things that I really wanted to pull out of the most current legislative session. Also, just reminder, there is the Director Summer School in Santa Fe in July. It's on that calendar that I included in the board packet. That calendar is the most comprehensive one that I have seen as of yet. That's why I forwarded it to you guys. I believe that's it right now. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Kirsten?
Yeah, Holly, so you said that the policy committee is recommending monitoring or for or against. Is there still time for CREA directors to vote as far as the CREA stance?
Yes, ma'am. It's similar to how the FAC or the POC handles things, is that they take a good deep dive look at these things. They'll read it and, you know, come up with any suggestions or ways that to potentially amend these bills, and then they make a recommendation to the full board for a vote.
Okay. And how or if do you want to receive any feedback that LPEA directors might have about any of the issues? I don't have any right now because I haven't really dived into this, but I'm not sure what the appropriate place is going to be for that. Do we do it here? Do we do it someplace else?
I personally am open for suggestions on that, because I would welcome any feedback that you have. When I do get that Colorado Capital Watch tracker website, that thing I think is really handy, and it provides a lot of information to help you kind of formulate whether you would have any suggestions or anything. So I'll send that on as soon as I can. But yeah, you can email me. This forum is fine by me as well.
Okay, thank you, Holly.
Yes, ma'am. Anybody else? Dan?
I was just going to give John's report. He text me and wanted me to let you know that he hasn't had a meeting in December, and January, the end of January 25th, I believe, they have a meeting, and then the annual meeting in February. And everybody's doing good. He wanted me to let you know.
Great, thank you. Okay. That's that. So last call, Kirsten.
Yeah, in the appendix, there was a 2022 fire mitigation annual report. And I think it's worth at least mentioning that it's here. Jessica, I was confused about whether or not this is going to be presented in the future.
Yeah, and I apologize. I was thinking about something different. So when I went back to look, yeah, that's our annual report that we're required to provide the board at the end of the year according to policy. So it's just a summary of all the activities we've done this past year.
Okay. So I do want to call folks' attention to it. Sometimes appendices can get mixed, and this is a pretty big thing for us. So I appreciate the report. I don't have any questions on it.
Thanks, Kirsten. And just to let folks know, a lot of the details on the report have been reported out during the dashboard. So this is not new information. We just compiled it in one final report.
Tim, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I withheld a question on that because I thought it was going to come later. So thanks for that clarification. Two things. One, I really want to applaud staff and co-op for continuing the raptor protection program. I'm an avid bird watcher, and I really appreciate any and all that we can do to reduce the risk to our raptors and other birds and so forth. I noticed that there's you count incidents involving birds or animals. I'm just curious, is that how that's I don't know, counted or determined? Is it you have to see the result of, of it, or how I'm just curious how we know that something was a bird or an animal.
Jerry, did you want to answer that?
They're usually, I mean, if a bird contacts, or any animal for that matter, most of the time you're going to have evidence either still up on the pole or at the base of the pole. And anytime that it's a raptor, we're required to report it to the Division of Wildlife. And thankfully, we haven't had one in quite some time. We were going back through the records. We had a question from some of our other local co-ops regarding raptors and incidents, and so we went back through our records, and we have had very few raptors and 0 eagles in the 15 years that I've researched.
Okay, excellent. So it's really like something happened, the power went out, they went out there, they found a carcass or something like that, essentially. Because I've witnessed in my neighborhood 2 squirrels demise in the last few years, but I think the circuit opened and then closed again. So those would not be counted, would they?
Those are counted as animal caused if we go out and witness it. Yes.
Okay. All right. And then trees contacting conductors, right? And I think maybe I asked this before and you probably gave me an answer, but I'm just curious about secondary lines, right? I mean, I've seen quite a few, secondary lines off the transformer to a home that goes through trees and they contact those trees. And it's kind of still a little unclear to me about what the risk is for that and how or who should be responsible for that.
So we will trim any secondaries that are within our right-of-ways, but the majority of secondaries running from a transformer pole overhead to a house, we do not have any kind of right-of-way, which is why it's the member's responsibility to maintain those. Now, if anytime that there's an upgrade, if we have open secondary, which is uninsulated wire, then we will change it out to insulated triplex wire, and at no cost to the member when they're upgrading their service. And the insulated wires, that's why we have them. That's why we use them. And because if we were to maintain and trim customers' trees, we would have to hire an entire tree trimming start another contract just for that.
Okay, that's helpful clarification. So I guess the for me, the question is, to what degree is that a risk of wildfire or other?
Very
issue?
minimal.
Very minimal.
Yep, anytime. So I ran into a handful of places where the tree had actually rubbed the insulation off. And then when that happens, it blows the transformer fuse almost immediately. And so at that point, we would trim the tree up where it's not rubbing on it. Now, other instances are when their trees are not maintained and we get something like snow load and it'll tear the triplex either off the house or off the pole. Same instance, it blows the transformer fuse. We go back out and just rehang and re-energize their triplex.
Okay, so it's from a fire, that kind of thing, it's a fairly low risk. And
very low risk.
I was just curious whether we need to make an education campaign to members to say, hey, look at this, take care of this or whatever, right?
Yeah, and we do have, we always recommend having professionals trim their trees for them, but the communications group did add additional language into our vegetation management plan. So it is available to the members on the website.
All right, thanks for your help. Great job, by the way, really good job. Thanks. I think Joe's next.
Just recalling from memory, our next meeting, February meeting is in person. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Dan, did you have a question?
Just a comment on page 96, director training. I believe that should be 2022 instead of 2023.
Yes. We'll get that fixed. Thank you.
Okay.
And Jerry, I hope my call to you to bring a bucket truck to tie the line up was a help, so that didn't have to go back to town and get it or send a guy up the pole.
Always is. We appreciate those calls.
Thank you, everybody.
Great. Okay, that's it. Thank you, guys. Meeting is adjourned. Appreciate everybody's hard work.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.